Any Other Business by George Ross and Campbell Singer, adapted for radio by David Turner.
Hello, Joyce. Where's the boss?
He's lunching with Pickford, Jocelyn and Taylor's representative. Pickford's trying to sell him one of their new lines.
Oh?
Got a sample of it here.
Oh, thanks. Ooh, not bad. Oh, they always turn out a decent job. Still, there's a falling market as far as woolen yarn is concerned. I hope he'll be careful.
Don't worry, Geoffrey. He knows what he's doing.
Well, I wish he'd hurry back. We've got the board meeting at 3:30, and he always likes to discuss the agenda for last-minute alterations. All the same, I'm glad to see you alone. I wanted to tell you.
Yes?
I'm leaving.
You're what?
I'm leaving. I'm leaving the firm.
I see. Because of me?
Mainly. I'm afraid I can't cope anymore, working near you, seeing so much of you, and... well, that's all.
I'm terribly sorry, Geoffrey. I've told you over and over again.
You needn't repeat it. In any case, I have a feeling that even if you did marry me, you'd be committing bigamy.
Is that meant to be funny?
Well, you know jolly well you've been married for the last 5 years to Henry Armstrong and Sons Limited.
In that case, I'm very happy and I refuse to be divorced. Oh, Geoffrey, you know how very fond I am of you. I'm sorry, but as Julian's secretary, I mean something. I'm someone. When are you leaving?
I don't know. I shall hand in my resignation at the meeting this afternoon. They'll easily find another chief accountant.
Have you put it on the agenda?
Oh, no. I shall bring it up under any other business. Ah, there you are, Jonathan. I was just coming to find you.
Is this what you wanted, Mr. Harrison?
Ah, yes. Your new design already made up.
Straight from the loom.
Now, what about this, Joyce? Look at it.
It's beautiful.
Look at the shade and the way it matches the design itself.
And how lovely to handle. It's a fine piece of cloth, Mr. Travis.
Thank you.
One of your best designs, Jonathan. Another winner. We must show it to the board. Joyce, see that Mr. Julian takes it in with him.
Right.
By the way, Jonathan, how's the other great work getting on?
Wonderful. I'm halfway through. Now, where's that bit of paper? Ah, here we are. Now, listen to this. Goosey, goosey gander, whither shall I wander? Upstairs and downstairs and in my lady's chamber. There I met an old man a-saying of his prayers. I took him by the left leg and helped him down the stairs. Much nicer, isn't he?
Oh, much.
Tell Mr. Julian I can do the design in all weights, but it's best in 18 to 19 ounces.
You haven't forgotten the board meeting this afternoon?
No, I'll be there. If I can get Humpty Dumpty finished. Bye.
Geoffrey, what is this nursery rhyme business all about?
Well, I think the old chap's got something. He believes that half the world's troubles are caused by children being brought up on the wrong literature. He says there are more examples of man's inhumanity to man in Grimm's fairy tales than in any other book, and that nursery rhymes run them a close second. So he's rewriting them.
Well, I hope he does something about what our little boy is made of. I once told the little boy next door I wouldn't play with him because he was made of slugs and snails and puppy dogs' tails. And he hit me.
It's nice to know that you were a little girl once. I've always pictured you being born with a notebook in one hand and a pencil, double B, of course, in the other.
You have become bitter, haven't you?
I'm sorry. I suppose I have. Well, I'd better get some papers sorted for the board. See you later.
Is Harrison there?
No, he's just left for his office, Mr. Julian.
Has he given you the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Julian.
Well, bring it in to me, would you?
Certainly, Mr. Julian. I'm glad you're back, Mr. Julian. I was afraid you might be late.
Pickford was a little long-winded, and then I had to look in at the weaving sheds. I'll make out a petty cash slip for my lunch, will you? Here's the bill. And get that order off to Pickford, Miss Anderson. Price 23 and 6, delivery 6 weeks after colouring up.
6 weeks? That's wonderful.
Ah. So this is the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Julian. Any other papers you need for the meeting are in this file.
Good. Are we having a full meeting today?
Mr. Stadden is still on the continent. But I saw Sir Norman a little earlier this afternoon in the finishing department.
Any word from Mr. Pleydon?
A telegram to say he will be arriving on the 11 o'clock from King's Cross. He should just make it. The train's on time.
What about Travis? You'd better remind him.
He seemed to remember when he was here a few minutes ago. He came in with his new design.
Yes, I've just seen it. Popped in the mill to have a look at it. Wonderful job. Anything else, then?
I don't think so. I've put out the cigarettes.
I thought we might have cigars today.
Cigars, Mr. Julian?
I have a feeling this meeting's going to be different somehow. On the other hand, perhaps we'd better not create a precedent.
Cigarettes it is, then?
I think so.
Well, I'll just finish off that typing, Mr. Julian.
Yes, good.
1:15.
Miss Anderson, looking lovelier than ever.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull.
Now, how many employees have we got? 1,584. And if we had a beauty competition, I bet you'd knock 'em cold.
Mr. Turnbull, you have the gift of always being complimentary without repeating yourself.
Good heavens, girl. Do you think I would have got where I have if I'd always used the same line of gab? What are you doing this evening?
Now you are repeating yourself, Mr. Turnbull.
Would you like to see the play at the Leeds Grand? Can't remember the name, but it opens in London next week. It's had some stinking write-ups.
Very tempting, but not tonight. Thank you.
Don't you want to get to know me better?
I've spoken to your wife on the phone often enough to have satisfied all my curiosity on that score.
Oh. Is there anyone else?
What do you mean, anyone else? You're the only one I always say no to.
Trying to be funny, eh? Well, I'm a patient man. I can wait. Must have a word with Julian first. I can wait. I can wait a long time. Hello, Julian. Mind if I come in?
Hello, Malcolm.
Sorry I haven't been in to see you since last week, but I've been covering some of our accounts in Wales and the Midlands.
So I've noticed by your returns. You've done very well, too.
Oh, it's nothing. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. As a matter of fact, I've been wanting to see you particularly for some time.
Whenever you want to see me particularly, I can guess the subject. But it's no good, Malcolm. Increase any of our expense allowances by another penny and there'll be a riot at the next annual general meeting.
But damn it all, it should be a little different on the sales side.
True, but there you have the disadvantage of always being compared with Gregory Statton. His expenses on the export side should be even greater than yours, but they never are.
The man can't take his liquor. No wonder his expenses are lower.
Well, in any case, would you mind checking your sales summary again? Oh, you're sitting on it.
So I am.
There's a mistake of £1,000 in the edition of last month's figures, which was pointed out to me by Harrison. I do like to be certain of any facts I'm responsible for presenting at the meeting.
Oh, sorry about that. One should never leave things to other people. If you let me have this month's sheets, I'll check them myself. There's still time before the meeting.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Oh, good afternoon, Sir Norman.
Not too busy, I hope, Julian. Turnbull.
Good afternoon, Sir Norman. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Do sit down. I heard you were in the building, but I was too late back from lunch to come and say hello. How is Lady Tullis?
Not any better, I'm afraid.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But her courage is wonderful, and that does help me a little. You'll have to excuse me if I get the 6:45 back from Leeds this evening.
Oh, naturally. You hurry things along as fast as you like from the chair.
Sir Norman, are you sure that nothing can be done for Lady Tullis? Would drive me crazy if I were so helpless.
She's in the hands of Sir Alan Edgecombe now. He's our only hope. At least I do know that if he has to operate, he is the best brain surgeon in Europe.
You haven't made up your mind yet whether to have the operation or not.
In the past, I've made decisions involving thousands of people. And yet, when it comes to the one insignificant human being whom I love, I just don't know what to do.
Well, I admire the way you're taking it. That's all I can say.
Me too.
Thank you, both of you. And now, if I may change the subject to something more cheerful, may I congratulate you, Mr. Turnbull, on last month's sales figures? The increase over the same month of last year is certainly a healthy one.
Thank you, Sir Norman. Well, if you gentlemen will excuse me, I promise to check up on some totals here.
Yes, we still have a few minutes.
Yes, so I'll see you in the boardroom, Sir Norman.
Right, Turnbull.
Ah, Harrison. Just the man I wanted to see.
And I was hoping to see you before the meeting, Mr. Turnbull.
Good. Have you got my cheque for last month's expense account?
I'm afraid not.
Oh, why not? It's a large amount. I spent the money and I need it.
There are 3 items in the account which I'm afraid I can't pass without explanation.
Who the devil are you that I should have to explain? You accountants like throwing your weight about, don't you?
Would you like to come to my office? The corridor's hardly the place for a discussion of this sort.
No. We'll settle the matter here and now. What are the 3 items you've taken such exception to?
I didn't say I'd taken exception to them. I'm merely querying them.
Querying them, eh? Huh. I wonder what you accountants would do if there were no such word as query. You'd go out of business. Well, what are the 3 items?
One is for a 20-minute telephone conversation with your wife when she was in New York last month. I can't recall the second at the moment. The expense sheet's in my office. The third is for a hotel bill, the dates of which indicate a weekend.
Now, look here, old chap. If you're going to start querying things simply on a matter of definition, there'll never be an end to this sort of thing.
Please, Mr. Turnbull, don't include similar items again. If you don't mind my saying so, I think you include them deliberately, on the principle that if they get through, it's something gained, and if they're queried, there's nothing lost.
You impudent blighter. I won't be spoken to like that. If it happens again, your resignation will follow very shortly. Oh, you think that funny, do you? Well, I'm not joking. Now, you pass that account, and I don't want to hear any more of the matter.
If you delete the 3 items, you can have a cheque immediately.
And if I don't?
I shall refer it to the board of directors for the necessary authority.
Have you gone mad? What's come over you?
I'm getting tired, Mr. Turnbull, that's all. It's an exhausting business having to use one's discretion so continuously. Will you come along to my office later so that we can straighten the account out?
What the devil for?
Well, if I were the slightest bit unscrupulous, it might be dangerous for me to have that statement with the hotel account even scratched out.
All right, I'm coming.
Isn't it time we were starting for the boardroom? You coming, Julian?
Yes, Sir Norman. I think we'll go this way. I want a word with Miss Anderson.
A remarkable young woman, that's. So efficient and yet so sympathetic.
Careful, Sir Norman. Miss Anderson?
Yes, Mr. Julian?
Remind Dodds and Harris that the meeting's about to begin.
I've just rang them, Mr. Julian.
You have? Good. Well, I've got everything here in this file. That's all, is it, Miss Anderson?
There's this, the sample of Mr. Travis's new design.
Oh, yes, we must let the director see this. Have a look at it, Sir Norman.
Oh, this is superb. I've never seen anything like it. It's unique. Julian, I want a suit length off the first piece.
You shall have it. Well, we'll get along then, Sir Norman. I wonder which you would say is the most important, Sir Norman. The financial statement or this piece of material Travis has created for us?
My dear Julian, you don't have to tell me that the success of this company depends largely on having the right goods to sell. And that old Travis always starts us off on the right foot.
I'm glad you realize that. My father's wisest bequest to the firm was making that old man a director. Otherwise, our competitors would have snaffled him long ago. And yet there's always been a certain amount of agitation to get him removed from the board. Turnbull and Pleydon are the chief offenders. If they ride their hobby horse today, perhaps you'll stop them from the chair. Because one day I shall clonk one of them.
I can't imagine you ever losing your temper. But don't worry, I'm on your side. Well, this is it then. Good afternoon, Dodds. Good afternoon, Harrison.
Good afternoon.
Do sit down, gentlemen. Anything wrong, Dodds?
Well, I hope it won't be too long, but I shall be in the mill till midnight.
Now, that's not a very nice way to greet us, Dodds. But I'm glad to see you. How are you?
Now, very well, thank you, Sir Norman. But very busy.
He's like a cat on hot bricks every moment he's out of the mill. Don't worry, man. If the boiler house blows up, someone will come and tell you.
Anyway, you're among friends here, Dodds, so there's nothing to worry about.
Well, it's not so easy. 3 months ago, when I was just a plain mill manager, I had to fight you all for everything I wanted. It's very confusing now, having you all as my friends.
Oh, come. It must give you a different feeling being a director of an organization such as this. Now, there are 3 of us still to come, aren't there?
I have a letter of apology from Mr. Stadden.
I'll call on you to read it as soon as we're formally open, Harrison.
Pleydon sent a telegram. We can expect him at any moment, Powell. I don't know what's happened to Travis. He should be here.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Terribly sorry I'm late, but you know what it's like trying to get away.
I'm very pleased you managed it, Pleydon. Now, what about Travis?
Geoffrey, would you fetch the old boy?
Yes, of course. Oh, here he is.
Afternoon, all. Jonathan. Excuse me just one moment, Sir Norman. What do you think of this one, Geoffrey? Little Miss Muffet, she sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. There came a big spider and sat down beside her and stayed with Miss Muffet all day.
Remarkable the difference only 1 or 2 words can make.
Isn't it, eh?
Look here, Sir Norman, do we have to...
I think we can begin now, gentlemen, so I formally declare the meeting open. Now, unless I hear anything to the contrary, we shall take the minutes of our last meeting as read and adopted.
Agreed.
Mr. Harrison, you had a letter of apology from Mr. Stadden. Will you read it, please?
Certainly. Sorry I can't make the meeting. I'm in Stockholm until tomorrow and then go to Oslo until the end of the week. Had dinner with Johansson last night and got... Well, I'd better not read the word, but he means drunk. He got even more drunk than I did. So here's his order for 200 pieces. Tell Travis design 8-1 is a wow for this market. 6 other orders totaling 318 pieces also enclosed.
What's the value of those orders? Between 45 and 50,000 pounds. Not bad. Not at all bad.
Very nice indeed, Pleydon. We now come to the financial statement. Now, I myself would just like to say that it's most encouraging, and if the figures are maintained, we shall have a really record year. In fact, I'd like to take this opportunity of congratulating all concerned. Whatever we may think of each other, and whatever our personal idiosyncrasies, this company has an executive team that would take a lot of beating.
Yeah.
On the sales side, Mr. Turnbull on the home front and Mr. Stadden abroad are showing steadily increasing figures without any sacrifice of profit margins. I don't know whether you've had the opportunity yet of studying the cloth output figures Mr. Dodds passed round a few minutes ago. I've taken a glance at them, and I think Mr. Dodds is a marvel.
Yeah.
Our weaving production now equals our finishing capacity, so that the cost of manufacture per piece has fallen quite considerably.
You can thank the new automatic looms I've just installed. They're the marvel, not me.
I would like also to say a special word about your managing director, Mr. Julian Armstrong. Apart from his smooth day-to-day running of this large concern, his particular aptitude for buying our raw materials at the right time and almost invariably at the right price has been a deciding factor in our constantly improving position. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Turnbull. I must detract just a little from the credit I gave you for maintaining profit margins. Some of it must belong to Mr. Julian.
Here.
Oh, dear, on second thoughts, Mr. Turnbull, we have to make another little subtraction.
Oh, leave me a little credit, Sir Norman.
I was going to say that Mr. Turnbull's job of selling is made very much easier by our decided leadership in cloth design. When you're first in the field with anything, you can always command a better price. Never forget that. And don't forget the man who makes it possible, Mr. Jonathan Travis.
Yes, good old Jonathan.
All that I have said, so far from disparaging our sales effort, has merely emphasized what I said previously, that we are a first-class team, and long may we remain so.
Yeah.
Now, any question on the figures?
Better than I expected. Harrison hasn't made any mistake in his figures, I hope.
We can take our accuracy for granted, Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Sir Norman.
Well, we'll take the next item on the agenda now, shall we? Share transfers. This doesn't often crop up. What's it about, Harrison?
Well, there seems to have been an unusually high number of dealings in our shares recently. The shares themselves have been moving forward in jerks. They've risen 2 3/4 since Monday.
Very nice for any of us who hold any of them. Worse luck I've only my 10 qualification shares. You still have your 100,000, Armstrong?
I still have the shares my father left me, yes. Have any of you been speculating recently?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have. No, but I'd hardly call it speculating. I meant to consult you, Julian. I'm sorry, but the market was rising, so I went ahead.
May I ask you how many shares you've acquired?
25,000.
Good heavens. Well, that accounts for something, then.
You lucky man. You must like us a lot.
I had quite a tidy sum to reinvest, and, well, I've reinvested it.
Thanks for the compliment. Sir Norman, I don't think as our chairman you could have expressed better the faith you have in the company. I appreciate it.
Not only in the company, Julian, but as I said before, in the team.
That calls for a toast, doesn't it?
We'll finish the business of the meeting first. We can adjourn to my office afterwards.
No, fortunately, the agenda is unusually short today. That disposes of the tabled items. Now, we now come to any other business.
There's
May
something
I take
I'd
up
like
just
to bring
a
up.
moment?
Mr. Pleydon, as a director, we'll give you precedence. Do you mind, Harrison?
Not at all, Sir Norman. What I have to say won't take very long, anyway.
Mr. Pleydon.
Oh, dear, this is a little difficult.
Oh, come along, Pleydon. I thought oratory was your business.
That's just the trouble. You see, gentlemen, unfortunately, oratory is going to cease to be my business. I regret to inform you that I've not been asked by my party to represent them again at the next election. Politics within politics, you know.
Oh, that's mighty bad luck. You have my sympathy, Mr. Pleydon.
This is to be your last term in Parliament, then?
Precisely. Up to now, my duties in the House have prevented me from widening my commercial activities. As you know, I've always been very proud of my association with Henry Armstrong and Son. But my one regret has been, and Sir Norman could not have emphasized it more by his pointed exclusion of my name, that I've not been a member of that executive team he praised so lavishly. I would like now to ask for the privilege of becoming a member. A real member.
Provided, I take it, Pleydon, that the salary is not less than you're now receiving as an MP.
That is something we might discuss later, I think.
Yes, you have my sincere sympathy over your candidature, Mr. Pleydon. The other matter, however, is one that will naturally require some discussion. You realize that?
If you think you could discuss it more freely in my absence, I should retire very gladly.
That's most considerate of you.
Well, perhaps you'd wait in my office. We won't be any longer than necessary.
Thank you.
Well, thank heaven he's brought the matter up himself. I've been hoping he'd miss a meeting so that we could discuss it.
We'll never catch him missing a meeting. Not as long as he collects his 10 guineas a time and expenses, which I bet you pass without a murmur, Harrison.
Sir Norman, I'm still very green in these matters, but, what's Mr. Pleydon's function on the board?
Yes, Dodds. Would you care to answer that, Julian?
Well, in our early days, when we required a certain amount of finance in the city, we thought the name of a member of Parliament on our board might carry a little weight.
Oh, and did it?
We'll never know. But today we have all the finance we need. And I do believe that in all the years Pleydon has been on this board, he's never even bothered to learn the difference between a warp and a weft. I suggest that he severs his connection with us completely.
Agreed.
Is that your opinion, Mr. Travis?
He's a decent chap. I'd increase his attendance fees to 20 guineas a meeting.
An excellent suggestion. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Good. Mr. Harrison, would you be kind enough to ask Mr. Pleydon to return?
Certainly.
Well, I hope the man's not too disappointed, but we'll soon see.
Well, Mr. Pleydon, we've discussed your request.
Thank you, Sir Norman.
I'm afraid you may find our decision a little disappointing. Much as we should have liked your fuller participation in our affairs, there is, unfortunately, no vacancy that exists at the moment, and to create one unnecessarily would, we feel sure, be as embarrassing to you as to us.
Oh, dear.
However, to show our appreciation of the advice and encouragement we've always received from you at our board meetings, we've decided to double your attendance fees.
Hear, hear.
Oh, well, thank you, gentlemen. Let me say that you may continue to rely on my advice and encouragement in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Pleydon. Now, Mr. Harrison, I believe you wish to raise something under any other business.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, I'm afraid, Sir Norman, that what I have to say may come as a bit of a surprise. But it's not a decision I've made lightly. I've thought about it.
Oh, the devil's that. Haven't you had instructions not to put any calls through when there's a board meeting?
I'm very sorry, Mr. Julian, but this is urgent. Mr. Meadows and Mr. Griffiths of Amalgamated Worcesters Limited are in the building and would like to speak either to you or to Sir Norman.
Did you tell them that we were at a board meeting?
Yes. Mr. Meadows said he knew that, and that was the reason he'd come, because he was anxious that what he had to say should be discussed by you and the other directors, so that he could have an immediate answer.
Well, why didn't he write? A letter would have got him an answer as quickly.
Just a moment, I'll ask him. He's in reception.
Meadows is managing director of Amalgamated Worcesters, isn't he, Julian?
Yes. Why this personal call, Miss Anderson?
Mr. Meadows says he'll give you his reasons when he sees you.
Well, just a moment then, Miss Anderson. Well, gentlemen, do we stand on our dignity and ask them to call back later, or do we unbend a little?
It's been a very short meeting, Julian. I don't think there's any harm in seeing them.
Agreed. I'm damn curious anyway.
In that case, do you see them, Sir Norman, or do I?
As he's only their managing director, I think it had better be you.
As you wish. Miss Anderson, have the two gentlemen shown into my office. I'll be along in a moment. I met this chap Meadows once or twice at Federation meetings. I can't say that I've cared for him very much. He has a reputation of being the rudest man in Yorkshire.
Oh, then I take off my hat.
Amalgamates are one of the biggest cloth manufacturers in Britain. They're bigger than us.
Well, if our figures have gone up, they've done so at Amalgamated's expense. He's probably come here to squeal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Meadows. Mr. Griffith?
So, this is his office, is it?
Mr. Julian Armstrong will be along presently. Will you take a chair?
I'll sit when I want to and where I want to.
Very well, Mr. Meadows.
What you looking at, Griffiths?
These patterns, Mr. Meadows, very nice.
Bring 'em here.
Very fine material.
Aye, maybe. Only 1% of the population wears cloth like this. We cater for the 99%. You don't waste time, labor, and machines on fancy stuff.
Perhaps not, Mr. Meadows.
No, perhaps you don't. Here, take it.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hello, Armstrong. We've met. This is Griffiths, my financial assistant.
I see Mr. Griffiths knows something about cloth as well as finance.
I find it pays to be an expert in more than one field.
Let's get to business. I don't want to waste your time, and I'm busy myself.
I'm sure you've time for a cigar.
No, thank you. But I'll remember where you keep them. Now, do you mind if we dispense with these civilities? Mr. Armstrong, during the course of the last week, I have acquired over 40% of the share capital of your company.
So Harrison was right, after all. Please go on, Mr. Meadows.
There's not much to add, is there? I now make a public offer to your shareholders to sell me their holdings. And in a couple of weeks, Henry Armstrong & Sons Limited belongs to me.
And what is your offer going to be?
32 and 6 per share. Cash.
Well, you do mean business.
No sense in doing things by halves. 10 and threepence above market price. Isn't a shareholder born would refuse an offer like that?
Possibly not. Well, now, could you tell me why we're honored with this personal call?
I was coming to that. Today's Wednesday. We intend making the offer public on Friday at 4 o'clock. It would save a lot of trouble if that offer had the recommendation of your board behind it, and that's what I'm here to get. There's not much time. Well?
May I ask you one thing? Should you acquire control of this company...
There's no question of that.
Should you acquire control of this company, what do you intend to do with it?
Tell him, Griffiths.
Do you think it wise at this stage?
Go on.
It'll be a pleasure. Now, first, you hold large stocks of yarn, exceptionally large, which you bought at the bottom of the market.
But
yes, Mr. Armstrong, we know all about them. And we know that they're in your balance sheet at cost. Well, we shall sell them to our own company at today's values.
Very clever.
Not bad, is it? As to the rest, we incorporate your most up-to-date plant with ours, scrap the rest, and liquidate Henry Armstrong and Sons Limited.
Do you think all this will be profitable?
It should net us a clear $500,000.
Free of tax.
What about the goodwill?
Bury it.
How nice. Did you happen to hear my father turn in his grave?
You could now begin to dig your own.
Does that apply to the rest of my board of directors?
Aye, with the exception of Jonathan Travis. He's one of the assets, also omitted from the balance sheet.
Dear old Jonathan. Yes, I've always said he was the best of the bunch. What happens to the rest of us?
Out, the lot of you.
With adequate compensation?
The only compensation you'll get will be the 48 hours grace we're giving you now. During that time, you can buy as many shares as you can lay your hands on. You should still be able to show a nice, tidy little profit. If by 3 o'clock on Friday we do not have your reply, then, as I said before, the offer will be made public, and you will have lost your chance, as well as your firm. I have you like that.
How pretty. Well, Mr. Meadows, it has certainly been a pleasure making your better acquaintance. I shall, of course, put your proposition before my colleagues on the board immediately, and it will naturally be for them to decide. But I personally shall vote you damned first. Now, Mr. Meadows, as you've already found out so much about our business, finding your own way out of the building shouldn't be very difficult. Good day to you both.
I'm going straight back to my office. If you come to a decision this afternoon, you can phone me. Come along, Griffiths.
Good day, Mr. Armstrong.
Oh, my God, this looks serious.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Julian. I thought you'd gone back to the boardroom. I heard the other two go out. Here are the letters you dictated before lunch. There's nothing wrong.
Huh? I beg your pardon.
Is anything wrong?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, really. Mr. Meadows, for instance, wouldn't say there was anything wrong.
It certainly didn't take you long to get rid of him.
No, it didn't. Well, I must go back now. I'll deal with that mail later.
May I ask you something?
Of course.
Did the board accept Geoffrey Harrison's resignation?
Did they what?
Oh, dear, I put my foot in it. He must have thought better of it.
No, my dear. Your call came in the middle of his preamble. Well, so that was it. But isn't he happy here?
Apparently not, Mr. Julian.
Oh, damn nuisance. I got used to him. However, it may not matter after all.
Mr. Julian,
Don't worry. If he does think better of it, I shan't mention it.
Sure Meadows has come here to kick up a stink about us pinching their markets.
Oh, what's this, Mr. Turnbull?
Ainsworth put in an order with them for 200 pieces, then cancelled it 10 minutes after they saw our range.
Oh, that's something for him to sort out with Ainsworth, I should say. Well, Julian, what does Meadows want? Something serious. What is it, Julian?
They made a takeover bid.
What the devil?
Oh, God.
Oh, gentlemen, please. There's no need to get excited until we've studied the bid.
But bastards, did you chuck them out of the window?
My apologies, Harrison. You were right about the unusual movement in share transfers. Meadows said they already hold over 40% of our shares.
40%?
They amalgamated Worcesters want to take us over?
Not us, I'm afraid. Just the company.
What precisely do you mean by that, Armstrong?
Julian, do you mind if we conduct this discussion a little more formally? In spite of the interruption, we're still at a board meeting. Now, Julian, would you mind giving us the details? First, how much is the offer?
32 shillings and sixpence per share in cash.
Oh, are they?
And they have 40% of our shares already. Well, that finishes us. Within 48 hours of the offer being opened to the public, they'll have 90%.
It does seem as if they mean business.
You're not doing so badly out of this, Sir Norman, with those 25,000 you just bought.
Malcolm, please let us leave personalities out of this. I myself have 100,000 shares, but that is not the point.
When is the public offer to be made?
On Friday at 4 o'clock.
There's no time at all. We can't do anything.
He wants the recommendation of this board behind him.
Naturally. Without it, he may have to increase the bid, high as it is. Do you mind if we have all the particulars, Julian, so that we may know where we stand?
Yes,
Yes.
You can have it in a nutshell. All that Amalgamated Worsteds are interested in are our reserves. The hidden reserves in our undervalued wool stocks, our investments, and the open reserves as disclosed in our balance sheet.
Then they're not interested in us as a going concern.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah. What about my new looms?
Well, Dodds, he did say they might incorporate some of our modern plant with theirs.
They're going to take them away. Those unforgettable miracles. They're going to take them away.
That is the intention.
But what about my operatives? I've sweated to make them the best in Yorkshire, and the happiest. Well, this will mean a sack for half of them.
I'm afraid it will.
What about us? Us on the board, I mean.
It's the sack for us too, Malcolm.
My God. All of us?
All. Except Jonathan Travis.
Just Travis? Not me, or Sir Norman, or even you, Julian. Just Travis. My God.
Congratulations, Travis.
I hardly think, Mr. Pleydon, that this is the time for congratulations. Nor for laughing.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I was just thinking of Dodds there. 3 months ago, he was just a happy, carefree mill manager, and then we made him a director. As mill manager, he might have kept his job. Doesn't it make you want to laugh?
I don't think you need worry, Harry. You're too well known in Yorkshire. You're all right.
All right, you say. You say I'm well known in the cloth business. No, but I'm too old to start at the bottom of a new ladder, or even halfway up. Sir Norman, tell me, how is it that a company like this, one of the oldest and most respected in the industry, with huge assets, practically no liabilities, and all that money in the bank, and with all those reserves tucked away, can find itself in a position like this? Well, how in heaven's name is it?
Unfortunately, Dodds, it can happen to any company such as ours at any time, and is the one penalty we sometimes have to pay for the otherwise admirable freedom of our financial system, a system which enables the owners of a property or commodity to sell it to the highest bidder. The owners of Henry Armstrong and Sons are the shareholders, something we're all inclined to forget, and the token of their ownership is those scraps of paper called share certificates. In a going concern, the value of those shares is chiefly determined by the amount paid in dividends. In a liquidation, by the realization value of the assets.
And, Dodds, it would appear from Meadows' offer that we're worth more dead than alive.
Dead duck. That's what we are. And those damn vultures are waiting for our carcasses.
The trouble has been that we were sitting duck. You will remember, Julian, I have always advocated higher dividends, which would have given our shares a value, leaving little attraction for a takeover bid. Harrison has always supported me, but year by year you have won the day with your arguments of caution.
Sir Norman is right. If anyone is to blame...
Sir Norman, may I correct a mistaken impression? It's true that I always advised higher dividends, but in fairness to Mr. Julian, I wouldn't say that his policy has been altogether wrong. We must remember that in our trade we are utterly dependent on a staple commodity, wool, one which is subject to violent fluctuations in price. And where such fluctuations exist, it's essential to have adequate reserves to act as a cushion.
Possibly. Let me state the position as I see it. Our shares today are quoted at 22 3. We have received an offer of 32 6. If we recommend acceptance, those shareholders who are still holding on to their shares will make a very handsome profit indeed. We, as directors, will have to resign or be forced off the board. Oh, and by the way, Julian, did Meadows mention the question of compensation?
Yes. He said none.
None?
Oh, well, I do think he's got a nerve. He expects our cooperation and doesn't want to pay for it.
He did add that we could take advantage of our knowledge and buy all the shares we could before the public.
Would that be honest?
Well, it would be typical of Meadows' morality.
I don't think we need discuss that aspect of the situation.
There is something I would like to say about it, with your permission, of course.
Certainly, Julian.
Some of us may be tempted by this speculation, so I would like to sound a single note of warning. Sir Norman will presently ask us formally whether we recommend acceptance of the offer or not. Personally, I'm going to suggest that we fight the offer tooth and nail. Should we win, those who've speculated in our shares are likely to take a severe rap.
I won't embarrass you, Julian, by asking you what are the odds against our winning. However, you've made it plain that you're against acceptance. I should like to hear some other opinions. Mr. Turnbull.
As I see it, we have very little to gain by giving in and nothing to lose by fighting. So I vote we fight. At least we can hang on to our jobs as long as the fight lasts.
Mr. Travis?
When it comes to making cloth, amalgamated worsteds are butchers. I'd rather stay here as long as I'm allowed to.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Mr. Pleydon, may we hear from you now?
Oh, dear, this is very difficult. I can't tell you how shocked I've been by this new turn of events. I think it's terrible.
It's a pity you won't have time to change the law about these things.
May I go on, Mr. Turnbull?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I must confess, outside Parliament I have few qualifications for earning a comparatively comfortable living. My only chance, faint as it may be, is that if I vote for acceptance of this offer, Amalgamated Worcesters may show some form of gratitude. And that is what I shall place my hopes in.
May I have your views, Mr. Dodds?
Well, I don't rightly know what to say.
Well, then, may I now formally move the resolution that this board of directors opposes the recommendation to our shareholders that they accept the offer of 32 shillings and sixpence per share to be made by Amalgamated Worcesters Limited, and that the board uses every legitimate means to retain its present control over the assets and goodwill of Henry Armstrong and Sons Limited.
Seconded.
As the resolution has been moved and seconded, I shall presently put it to the vote. But before doing so, I should like to say a few words myself. There is one thing which each of you have overlooked, and that is that this company does not belong to us. It belongs to the shareholders whose servants we are. Their interest should be your first consideration, and if you ignore that, you may find it more difficult than you imagine to secure another position of trust. Individually, you'll be committing commercial suicide.
On whose side are you, Sir Norman?
I'm on the side of the shareholders, Mr. Turnbull. On whose are you? I'm sorry, gentlemen, to be so blunt, but in a situation like this, inequitable as it may appear, we must simply ignore all personal considerations. And from the point of view of the shareholders, this bid is an exceptionally generous one.
Are you overlooking the fact that you happen to be a shareholder? Quite a large one.
As a matter of fact, Turnbull, I had overlooked it. But as you've mentioned it, I shall use it to illustrate what a takeover bid can mean from the shareholders' point of view. 3 weeks ago, I held shares in Stansted Cottons with a market value of just over £20,000. Then came a bid from the Crawford Group that enabled me to buy shares in Henry Armstrong, valued, when I bought them, at about £27,000. Now, if Amalgamated's offer is accepted, I shall receive for my holding about £40,000. I'm sorry to have to quote my own case, but at least it should point out where the benefit to shareholders lies. And as I keep on reminding you, our first duty is to them.
You say our first duty is the shareholders. Don't you think the shareholders have any duty to us?
I should say they have. We do the work, after all.
They're simply capitalizing on our efforts.
We do receive payment for our efforts, Julian.
Sir Norman, what about the people who buy our cloth? Don't we owe anything to them? Our quality is a byword in the trade. Our standard's something they can rely on. And we give it to them at a price not very much higher than that muck Amalgamated turn out. And if Amalgamated take us over, they're going to get bigger muck than ever.
You have a point there, Dodds. But I don't think it's relevant to the question of ownership of this company or to the benefit of that ownership.
Sir Norman, may I ask you something? How strongly do you feel about this?
No, Julian. I'm not going to resign my chairmanship. It will be sufficient for me if my vote against the resolution is duly recorded. And I have a feeling that if this resolution is carried, you may need my advice more than ever. Oh, we'll put it to the vote now. The resolution before us is that we fight this takeover bid. Mr. Pleydon and I are against. Any more against? Those in favour? Julian, Travis, and Turnbull. What about you, Dodds?
Well, I don't know sufficient to vote either way. Do you mind if I abstain?
In that case, gentlemen, Mr. Julian's resolution is carried. What do you wish to do next?
The next step is to implement the second part of the resolution, which is that this board uses every legitimate means to retain control.
Here, here.
Now, I understand that the usual method is to transfer the assets to some new company, whose shares we, as directors, will take up.
You can't float new companies in a day, you know.
I don't think the difficulty will be the new company. You can buy ready-made private companies for little more than their cost of flotation. But our articles of association do not give us power to transfer the assets.
Are you sure, Geoffrey? I thought the articles were rather indefinite on that point.
They were rather indefinite until we took Council's opinion on it several years ago. It was a tricky point, and Council took some time to decide. But he did decide that we were not empowered to transfer any assets. I'm sure that Meadows will have got hold of a copy of our articles.
Then we'll have to try a bluff. If Meadows has the articles, he'll be just as puzzled as we were. He'll realize that it will be a matter for Council. And if we're fight, he'll assume, quite correctly, that we've already taken Council's opinion. We needn't tell him what that opinion was.
That's a clever move. I'm with you, Julian.
You'll be taking a risk. There'll be weeks of legal procedure with regard to the buildings. And Meadows will have an injunction on you before you've moved very far with it.
Well, we won't sell the buildings. We'll lease them to the new company. And the plant as well, so that we can carry on. The stocks, we can sell over a single letter of acceptance. Oh, what has come over Miss Anderson today?
Yes, what is it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Julian, but a call has just come through from London for Sir Norman.
I'll put it through at once.
Must be the hospital about your wife. Here you are, Sir Norman.
Hello? Yes, speaking. I see. Just a moment, please. Julian, my wife. Sir Alan says he has to operate immediately. I can't leave you now, but my wife will need me.
Of course, Sir Norman.
Miss Anderson, please telephone the station at once and find out where the next train leaves from, Leeds or Bradford.
Certainly.
Then get Bruff to drive Sir Norman in.
Yes, sir.
You just put yourself in Miss Anderson's hands. I hope Lady Tullis pulls through.
Thank you, Julian. I feel very badly at having to leave you at a moment like this.
Here's a small cutting, Sir Norman. Slip it in your pocket. My cloths have always brought the firm luck. I hope this one does the same for you. It's my new design.
I'm very touched, Mr. Travis. Thank you. Hello? Sorry to have kept you. I shall be leaving at once. Will you please have my car at King's Cross? Thank you. I'd like to telephone my wife's brother, if I may. He's also in Yorkshire. May I use the telephone in your office, Harrison?
Of course. And good luck, sir.
Oh, thank you. And best of luck to all of you.
Good luck to you.
Well, goodbye, gentlemen.
Good luck to you, Sir Norman. Bye-bye.
I'll keep you informed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a great pity about Sir Norman, but we must not let his troubles make us forget our own. Harrison, find me one of those ready-made companies and put everyone you can spare on to getting out a stock inventory.
Very good, Mr. Julian.
Also, draft a cable to Mr. Stadden. We must let him know. Show it to me before it goes. And you better minute the adjournment of this meeting till tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Is that all right with you all?
Oh, just one small favor, Mr. Armstrong. Would you mind calling a new meeting instead of adjourning this one?
All right, Pleydon. We can still afford the few odd guineas.
Oh, thank you. If you'll excuse me, I must telephone my home and arrange an hotel here. Goodbye, then, gentlemen.
And I've got to meet my wife. Damn nuisance, but I suppose I've got to.
It'd be too bad of you to lose your wife as well as your job.
That's a matter of opinion.
You better get back to the mill, Dodds, and clear up what you have to do. But don't go home yet in case I need you.
Shall I wire the place for a charge of dynamite?
Well, not yet, anyway.
You're still the boss.
Well, Jonathan, haven't you got a new nursery rhyme that fits this little situation?
I've started on one.
Which one is it?
Old Mother Hubbard.
Good morning, Miss Anderson. Fancy meeting you.
Yes, just fancy. I hope you enjoyed the play last night.
I should have enjoyed it more if you'd been there. Afraid I was a little too preoccupied last night. What about taking my mind off things this evening?
You're an incurable optimist, aren't you? But the answer is still no.
Don't you want to live?
Yes, very much.
Then don't confuse life with living. Life is only about 10% of living.
In your case, I should say about 90%.
Oh?
Yes. The lower the animal scale, the higher the percentage. Isn't that so?
Don't worry. You'll change your mind. I can wait. Oh, morning, Harrison.
Morning, sir.
I'd better get along to the boardroom, Joyce. If you do change your mind about this evening, let me know.
Oh, what have you been saying to our mutual friend?
I told him he was a wolf.
Jolly good.
And he's not the only one. Just because Julian is happily married, there are one or two who seem to think that makes me fair game.
Oh, at least I wanted to marry you.
Wanted to? Past tense?
Past, present, and always.
Geoffrey?
Yes?
What's going on here?
I've been kissing you.
Yes, I noticed that. I mean with the firm. There are things happening, big things. I can sense them. Usually I know everything, but today I feel like a very helpless office boy. What is going on?
Hasn't Mr. Julian told you?
No.
Then it must wait. But don't worry him for the moment. Just go on feeling helpless. It's very nice. Oh, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Harrison. Good morning, Miss Anderson.
Good morning, Mr. Julian.
I hope there's nothing important in the post. I haven't time to look at a thing, not until after the meeting.
It can all wait. Oh, but there's one letter marked personal and urgent.
I'll take it in with me. And no word from Sir Norman?
Not yet.
Oh, you may interrupt us if there is. Come along then, Harrison. Let's get to this meeting. Well, what news have you got?
I have the memorandum and articles of the new company here, but also the necessary share transfers handing over ownership to us. The figure of yarn and peace stock and debtors will be ready later this morning.
Good. We should have everything tied up then.
Oh, and here are yesterday's minutes. Would you like to glance at them before I hand them out?
Let's have them. These minutes should make history.
Morning, Turnbull. Dodds.
Morning, Julian.
Morning, Mr. Julian.
Ready for a start, are we, everyone?
Seen this? Bloke in the Yorkshire Post says we must be going to declare an increased interim dividend. Oh, where do they get their information?
2 and 2 make 4, even in Yorkshire. What are our shares?
9pence up on yesterday.
That means Meadows has got a few more.
Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm not late.
Come on, Pleydon. We're just beginning.
This is interesting. This letter marked urgent. It's from Meadows.
Meadows? That fellow's making a nuisance of himself. What's he got to say now, Julian?
A nuisance? Just listen to this. I know all about Council's opinion on the disposal of your assets.
What? Oh, no, that...
If you make one move in that direction, I'll have an injunction slapped on you so fast you'll need Council again to tell you what's hit you. Well, I'm sorry, gentlemen. It looks as though we'll have to think of something else.
Mr. Julian, I may not know much about company affairs, but I can tell you one thing. There's a bloody traitor among us.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
And whoever it is, it must be the same person who disclosed our reserves to Meadows in the first place.
And that person is on this board.
Precisely, Jonathan.
That's a nice way of excluding yourself, Harrison.
Not at all. I've certainly had the same opportunities as you, Mr. Pleydon.
And what exactly do you mean by that?
Gentlemen, please. If we're going to have a slanging match, and I suppose it's unavoidable, at least let us do it in order. Very well, then. Are there any suggestions as to who this traitor in our midst might be?
This is no joking matter, Julian. Until you find this traitor, you cannot move one single further step to avoid the takeover.
Oh, damn it, Jonathan. Look at us. Look at the faces round this table. There's Turnbull, Pleydon, Sir Norman's not here, myself, Harrison, and Dodds. There isn't one of us who hasn't been with the firm less than 10 years. Take another look, Jonathan, because we've trusted each other implicitly up till now. But one of us is a traitor, and we have to find out who it is. Oh, dear. I now realize my limitations as vice chairman. I wish Sir Norman were here.
Maybe it's a blessing that he isn't. Because I'd bet my bottom dollar that he is the nigger in the woodpile.
No, really, Mr. Turnbull.
On a point of order, Mr. Julian, this meeting has not yet been formally opened. Would you like this discussion to be continued informally or as part of the meeting proper?
Any decision we come to will have to be dealt with formally, so we might as well deal with the discussion in the same way. Very well, gentlemen. In Sir Norman's absence, I declare this meeting open. I think you've all had time to read the minutes of yesterday's meeting, handed round to you by Mr. Harrison. May I take them as read, and will somebody move their adoption?
I do.
Seconded.
Now to the main item. Mr. Turnbull has said that he believes Sir Norman Tullis is responsible for this company's unfortunate predicament. No doubt you've got good reasons, Malcolm. What are they?
A, the 25,000 shares he bought so very opportunely. B, he said nothing about them until you, Julian, mentioned the rise in price of our shares. And C, he's voting in favour of accepting Amalgamated's offer. And if those 3 reasons aren't sufficient to hang him, I'll give you another 1 or 2.
And I'll give you 3 reasons why it wasn't Sir Norman.
I'm glad you're waking up at last, Travis. What are your 3 reasons?
A, Sir Norman was your father's friend, Julian. B, Sir Norman is on the board of quite a few other companies, including a large merchant bank in the City of London. And he wouldn't dare risk his reputation by doing something like this. And C, I just don't believe it's him.
I've given you 3 concrete reasons. You've mentioned 3 abstract assumptions. Oh, don't be silly, old man.
Reasons are not evidence. You'll learn that as you get older. If it's reasons you want, I'll give you a reason why it could be any one of you here.
Aren't we treading on rather dangerous ground?
In what way?
Slander, defamation, or whatever.
I dare say we can risk that, Pleydon.
All right, I shall find the proceedings very interesting.
Good. And to make them more interesting still, I think we'll start with myself. Come along, Jonathan. What are the reasons why I could be the traitor?
The 100,000 shares you hold, Julian. If this deal goes through, you'll be making over £50,000 profit. That's a lot of money.
I voted against acceptance.
The reasons why it should not be any of us are bound to be better than the reasons why it should be.
Oh, that deals with me. What about Turnbull? You got any reasons for him?
Oh, yes, quite a good one.
Come on, out with it.
Mr. Turnbull would sell his soul for a more liberal expense allowance.
Now, look here, Travis. I'll not stand any more nonsense from you. Now, take that back, damn you.
Take it easy, Malcolm. Jonathan happens to be in order.
Then will it be in order for me to say why it could be him? He sits apart there pretending he's not listening, but he's listening all the time. It's nothing more than a pretense.
Mr. Turnbull, if I may say so, you have already accused Sir Norman. Are you accusing Jonathan as well?
We were talking about reasons, remember?
If I don't listen to the arguments at board meetings, Mr. Turnbull, it's because I've heard them all before, or because I know all the answers. And I've other, more important things to do. As a matter of fact, I've just finished Mother Hubbard.
We'll hear it later, perhaps, Jonathan. Have you finished with Mr. Turnbull?
Don't you think his reason's good enough?
I've answered all my questions. Now, what reasons have you got for Mr. Dodds?
Mr. Dodds? Mr. Dodds and Mr. Staddon are 2 people it couldn't be.
Agreed about Staddon, but why not Dodds?
Mr. Dodds doesn't know the first thing about a balance sheet. And whoever disclosed our plan yesterday had previously disclosed some important balance sheet information.
Dodds' ignorance about balance sheets could easily be a pretense. The stakes are very high in this game.
Well, look, I'm going to let you all into a little secret, which even Geoffrey here doesn't know.
Go on.
3 weeks ago, I started going to technical college. I've turned 60, you know, to try and learn a little about bookkeeping.
Oh, no.
Well, but for heaven's sake, don't any of you tell me why.
Not unless she starts thinking it's a woman you're spending your time with. Now, come along, Jonathan. You're supposed to be giving the reasons, not Turnbull. We're still waiting for your reason about Dodds.
Very well. If you must have one, next to yourself, Harry Dodds knows more about our yarn stocks than anyone.
Well, of course I do. I have to work with them, don't I?
All right, Dodds. We haven't finished yet, Jonathan. What about Mr. Pleydon?
Mr. Pleydon's a very frightened man, and frightened men are dangerous men.
Thank you, Mr. Travis, for letting me off so lightly.
I haven't let you off lightly, Mr. Pleydon. You reacted lightly, that's all.
Well, there's one person left. Mr. Harrison, who has one advantage over the rest of us, at least when it comes to balance sheets. What about Mr. Harrison? Come along, Jonathan.
You can say whatever you like. Go on.
Never mind, Jonathan. I know Harrison is a very good friend of yours, so we won't embarrass you further. Anyway, I can give you a possible reason for Mr. Harrison. Harrison, would you mind telling us what the matter was you intended to bring up yesterday under any other business?
Well, it doesn't matter now. I've changed my mind.
Oh, never mind about that. Tell us all the same.
It's quite irrelevant now, I assure you.
Please, Mr. Harrison, I insist.
Oh, well, very well, then. I intended handing in my resignation.
What? You what?
May we know the reasons?
Purely personal, I assure you. I've loved my work here. I've been very happy. And I've made some wonderful friends.
Did you have another position to go to?
None at all.
Very rash of you. You're sure it wasn't with Amalgamated Worsteds?
It was not with Amalgamated Worsteds.
Why did you change your mind?
I didn't want to leave a sinking ship.
I don't care for that metaphor very much.
I'm sorry, but you know what I mean.
Very well, Julian. It could have been any one of us, but I'm still willing to bet it was Sir Norman, and I'll tell you why. Any other person in his position would have resigned his chairmanship after having been outvoted on so strong a matter of principle, but he didn't. And why? Because if he had, he wouldn't know our intentions anymore, and he wouldn't be able to betray us anymore. That's why he didn't resign.
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Turnbull. I certainly should have resigned in his position.
As a matter of fact, I think we might even be able to prove it.
How?
That letter, the one you had there from Meadows. Do you mind if I look at the envelope? Yes, it was posted yesterday. Therefore, the information must have been telephoned to Meadows after our meeting. Sir Norman said he had to telephone his wife's brother, didn't he? That was only a blind. He telephoned Amalgamated Worsteds.
Pure speculation, Mr. Turnbull.
Well, the switchboard girl can tell us if it's speculation or not.
Miss Anderson,
Yes, Mr. Julian?
do you know what train Sir Norman caught yesterday?
The 6:10 from Bradford. He was rather lucky. He had only 5 minutes to wait.
He said he was going to telephone his brother-in-law. Could you find out from the switchboard what number that was?
As a matter of fact, he asked me to telephone his brother-in-law while he made another call.
Then it's the number of the other call that I should like to know.
Very well.
Well, gentlemen, your doubts will soon be resolved.
Any bets, anyone? Come along, Harrison. I've got to get some money out of you one way or the other.
Betting would be a breach of Mr. Harrison's professional etiquette. I like a bet myself, but I don't back certainties, especially when they're losers.
I'll take you for a fiver.
What? You played?
Yes, me. I agree with you about Sir Norman, and I've told you what I think about that telephone call. Besides, I like a bet occasionally.
And the bet's on.
Excellent.
There you are, Miss Anderson. You may tell Mr. Turnbull that telephone number.
Sir Norman asked for the number of Amalgamated Worsteds and for Mr. Meadows. Is that all?
Yes, that will be all. Thank you, Miss Anderson.
Well, what do we do now?
There's only one thing to do. Remove the bastard as chairman and kick him off the board. £5, if you don't mind, Pleydon.
Yeah.
Thanks. Kick him off the board, that's all we can do.
Can anyone suggest an alternative?
On a point of order, you have the power to remove Sir Norman as chairman, but only the shareholders can remove him from the board.
In that case, I propose the following resolution. Take this down, Harrison.
Yes?
This board considers that Sir Norman Tullis has not acted in the best interest of the company in the matter of Amalgamated Worsted's bid for the control of its shareholding, and resolves that he shall no longer be chairman of this board. It is further resolved that the secretary be instructed to write to Sir Norman accordingly, suggesting that he should offer his resignation from the board. Have you got all that?
Would you like me to read it back?
Not unless it isn't clear to any of my fellow directors.
I don't think it will be necessary, Malcolm. I couldn't have expressed it better myself, or more tactfully. Well, gentlemen, you've heard the resolution proposed by Mr. Turnbull. Will anyone second it? You, Pleydon?
It will give me a very great
Mr.
pleasure.
Julian, please. If the resolution is seconded, it will have to go on permanent record in the minutes, whether it's passed or not. Before you take that irrevocable first step, may I please say something?
Look here, Harrison, I feel just as sorry as you do for Sir Norman with his wife in danger. But the life and death of this company is also at stake.
I realize that fully, but I'm convinced that we'll be making a very grave mistake. I know that telephone call must appear damning, but I'm sure there's some explanation for it. And we ought to have the courage to demand it in Sir Norman's presence instead of sacking him in his absence.
We're wasting time, Julian, and it's sheer presumption on Harrison's part to talk like this. He's not a director of the company.
I'm sorry, Harrison, but Turnbull is right, you know.
Well, then before you decide, let me say one more thing. I have a plan to suggest, one that could possibly avert the takeover.
Avert it?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, if you're right about Sir Norman, that is, who is not here and will not know of the plan. If you're wrong about him, and the traitor is one of us, then the plan will fail.
Harrison, as we're now reduced to clutching at straws, we'll be glad to hear any suggestion that gives us the remotest chance. I shall therefore ask Mr. Turnbull to withdraw his resolution.
Oh, very well.
Go ahead, then.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge inspiration for my plan to Mr. Travis.
To me?
Yes, Jonathan, to you. It was yesterday when you mentioned that you were working on Old Mother Hubbard. The thought struck me that Amalgamated might easily change their minds if they were to find the cupboard bare.
There's nothing about finding the cupboard bare in my version. You know that. I refuse the acknowledgement.
Well, then thanks all the same for the negative inspiration. Mr. Julian, how well do you know Pickford?
We bought millions of pounds worth of yarn from his firm. He's become a very good friend of mine, socially as well as in business.
Would you trust him implicitly?
Most definitely.
How far would he go to help you?
As far as would lie in his power, I'm sure of that.
That's fine. Then this is what I suggest. Place an order with Pickford for 3 years' supply of yarn. The first year at today's prices, the second year a shilling or two higher, and the third year even higher still. Now, with an order of that size, we shall have to put down a very large deposit. So large that to find it, we will have to call on nearly all our free cash and sell all our securities.
If the wool market breaks, you'll have us bankrupt within a month.
I know. But if Meadows takes us over, the risk of bankruptcy becomes his, not ours. Mr. Julian must, of course, arrange with Pickford that should Meadows be scared off and the takeover not materialize, then the whole transaction is to be cancelled.
But that is collusion.
It is, indeed. That's why I asked if Pickford could be trusted.
Well, he can be trusted, all right. Now, let me think. Yes, if we get rid of our cash and securities, it will remove the cream of the whole takeover objective. And the order itself will place a 3-year halter around Meadows' neck, whereas he wants a quick jump in and a quicker jump out. Harrison, I take off my hat to you. I think it's worth trying.
Thank you. Well, then, can I have half an hour to work out the value of our securities at today's market prices so that I can arrive at a final cash figure? I'm sure you'd all like to know it. It will have to be after the meeting, so I'll send each of you a memo if you're still in the building.
Good. Now, let's get this plan agreed. Well, gentlemen, I personally think the idea is an excellent one, and we shall owe Mr. Harrison a tremendous debt should it be successful.
Yeah. May I ask one thing? Mr. Harrison, I too admire your ingenuity, but it all sounds a little too facile to me. I'm sure there's a catch in it. Now, do you really think that Meadows will be so foolish as to believe that order to be genuine?
That, I admit, is the catch. Not what Meadows believes, but what, if anything, he's told. If he's not told of our little arrangement with Pickford, then the transaction, as far as he knows, is a perfectly proper one. Crazy, perhaps, and motivated by sheer spite on our part, but absolutely legal. And there'll be nothing whatever that he can do about it. On the other hand, if Meadows is told that the transaction is a collusive one, well, he'll very quickly have an injunction on us setting it aside, and that'll be the end of that. That's why I said it all depends on whether the traitor is with us in this room now or not.
Thank you, Harrison. We shall learn that soon enough. Well, gentlemen, is it agreed that we go ahead and meet again tomorrow for the result?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
Agreed, then.
Oh, it's you, Geoffrey. I thought it might be Julian.
I didn't see you at lunch today.
I had some shopping to do.
Darling, did you tell Julian I intended leaving?
I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd changed your mind. Have you changed your mind?
Not exactly. Choose a more suitable occasion, that's all.
What's the occasion got to do with it?
You'll know soon enough. Everybody will know by the end of the afternoon.
I'm fed up with all this mystery.
Sorry. Has Mr. Pickford phoned?
No, why?
Has Mr. Meadows phoned?
No one has phoned.
Oh, dear.
Geoffrey, why are you so worried?
I'm worried in case I might be wrong after all.
There's a telegram here for Julian. Could that be from Mr. Pickford or Mr. Meadows?
No, they'd either phone or call personally. A telegram? Must be from Sir Norman. I wonder what his news is.
Perhaps Mr. Julian has gone straight to the boardroom. Would you give it to him?
Yes, I can hardly wait for him to open it. Let you know what it's all about later.
Right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dodds. On the way to the boardroom?
Yes. You know, I've been thinking about you ever since yesterday. I'm sure you're barking up the wrong tree.
We'll see.
It must be Sir Norman.
Why?
Well, if it isn't Sir Norman, we'll have been sold to Meadows again by whoever it is. And that would have happened yesterday afternoon. And ages before this, Meadows would have been down on us like a ton of bricks. On Pickford, too. But there hasn't been a peep out of either of them.
Meadows is sitting on that information, chuckling to himself like mad. I'll bet he is. He'll be in no hurry to let on he knows. He'll keep us guessing. Time his blow so as to leave us as little room as possible for further maneuver.
I suppose you're right. But I can't understand why you put forward such a wonderful scheme at all if you're so certain it would fail.
Because it was the only scheme I could think of which, if betrayed to Meadows, would give the traitor away at the same time. That's the first essential.
How?
I've set a trap for the fellow.
What do you mean?
No more questions. Wait and see.
Come along, you two. We're all here. We can start.
Oh, this telegram has just come for you, Mr. Julian.
Thank you.
Meadows, is it?
No. Sir Norman. He says, operation completely successful, a miracle. Flying up to the mill, must return London tonight.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank God for that.
Amen.
And amen.
It looks as though this telegram was handed in at the airport. That means Sir Norman will be with us at any moment.
I think that demonstrates Sir Norman's great loyalty to this company.
Yeah.
Mr. Harrison, I would like to remind you, and the others present, that so far we have not had the slightest reaction to your very estimable plan, which would tend to confirm our hopes of saving the company, but not, I'm afraid, Sir Norman's loyalty.
Here.
I would also remind you all that our deadline is 3 o'clock today, a little less than half an hour away. At 3 o'clock, Meadows wants our answer. At 4 o'clock, he communicates with the press. The time is now appropriate for us to inform Meadows of what we've done, so that he may think better of his intentions. However, I should like your decision on that.
If you telephone him now, you take the risk of him telling you what to do with yourself.
Thank you, Jonathan. That risk is small and growing smaller. Well, Mr. Harrison, what is your opinion? I appreciate your stand on Sir Norman's behalf, but on the evidence, and ignoring your instincts, which are about all you've got left, what would you suggest?
I'm sorry. Possibly my instincts are all I have left, but they're as strong as ever, and I cannot share the general optimism. But I don't see any harm in telephoning Meadows, except that you would merely be anticipating your own disappointment.
Then, for heaven's sake, let's telephone and get it over. Then when Sir Norman does arrive, at least we'll know whether to throw him down the stairs and have a drink, or shake him by the hand and then go and drown ourselves.
That's quite a sensible viewpoint.
Miss Anderson?
Hello?
Would you get me amalgamated worsteds? I want to speak to Mr. Meadows.
Do you mind if she postpones that call for a few minutes?
Sir Norman, we just started our meeting. Are you joining us?
Of course. Is it all right about that call?
Certainly. It can wait.
I'll be with you at once.
Sir Norman's arrived, then. Nice to be back where we were.
Mr. Julian, may I appeal to you not to give Sir Norman the slightest hint that you suspect him? At least not until Meadows phones, please.
Very well, I'll try. Pleydon?
All right.
Turnbull?
That goes for me, too.
No doubt Sir Norman will have a very good reason for wanting that call postponed.
No doubt.
Congratulations, Sir Norman, on your wonderful news.
It is marvelous, Sir Norman.
Thank you.
We look forward now to Lady Tullis's complete recovery. Mr. Harrison, would you please minute that formally as the wish of the whole board?
Yes, of course.
Here.
Thank you, gentlemen. But may I particularly thank Mr. Travis? Mm-hmm. Everything seemed to be over. I was at my wife's side. She regained consciousness. I was twiddling nervously with that pattern you gave me, of your new design.
Oh, yes, sir.
I could see her looking at it, and after a few moments I could sense her asking for it. So I gave it to her, and she smiled. It may be just Sir Alan's story, but he maintains that smile was the turning point. What are you busy on now?
Jack and Jill, and I'm making no progress at all.
Now, if we finish our business quickly, I'd like to help you.
Would you like to take over the chair, Sir Norman?
No, indeed. Not until I picked up all the threads. Please carry on, Julian. Oh, my thoughts were very divided down there, I can tell you. What happened about that plan for disposing of the assets to some company under our control?
I thought you knew.
How could I?
Oh, no, of course. I'm getting confused. Well, unfortunately, that little plan of ours fell through. Harrison, have you got that letter from Amalgamated?
Yes, here it is.
Would you give it to Sir Norman, please?
Good heavens. Where does that devil Meadows get his information?
We've been spending a lot of time trying to find that out.
Any clues?
We've established that everyone in this room could be credited with a possible motive.
Including myself, of course.
Including yourself.
Sir Norman, would you mind explaining the joke to us? Because as a matter of fact...
I'm sorry, Turnbull. I was just thinking of those 25,000 shares I bought. Pretty damning, I wonder what you fellows must have said about them. It's a funny thing, too. I've been a director of over a dozen large concerns for about 20 years now, and this is the first time there's ever been a...
Bloody traitor is the word you're looking for, Sir Norman. At least that's the word we've been using.
That's it. And in all those companies, this is the very last in which I would have expected to find such a person as you described, Mr. Turnbull.
He exists. We haven't found him yet.
You'd better find him, Julian. And I'll tell you why. That afternoon, when I had to go back to London, I had 5 minutes to spare. So I took the opportunity of telephoning our friend Meadows.
Indeed?
I took it upon myself to suggest an amalgamation of our joint interests rather than the complete swallowing up of one of us.
Amalgamation with Meadows?
Yes, Julian. The great advantage of most takeover bids is the pooling of executive brains and technical resources, leading to all sorts of new ideas. Meadows has a good team behind him, too. Working together instead of in competition, these two teams would be capable of some great achievement.
I'm afraid I can't agree.
Neither could Meadows. All he was interested in was the capital gain. And with us out of the way, he boasted he would make bigger trading profits as well. Meadows was quite rude about it. So rude, in fact, that I made up my mind I'd move heaven and earth to stop him. The moment my wife was out of danger, I spent every possible moment I could away from her bedside trying to find a way.
And did you find one?
I think so. But I don't intend to take any chances. I've enlisted the help of some very good friends, and I certainly wouldn't dream of committing them unless I had as much faith in this board as I had 2 days ago. That is why we have to find this traitor.
That's good, Sir Norman. Julian, I think the time has come for some plain...
What is it?
I have Mr. Pickford on the telephone. He says it's urgent.
Pickford? Put him through. Hello, Jack. I see. No, I understand. I'm very grateful to you for having tried. Oh, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but our traitorous colleague has struck again.
Oh, what's that?
Sir Norman... yes, Jack? Oh, Harrison, Pickford wants a word with you. Be quick, won't you?
Hello, Mr. Pickford. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Hello? Oh, that's wonderful. I told you it'd work. What's the figure? 330,000. I can't tell you how grateful I am for your cooperation. Look, would you mind repeating that figure to Mr. Julian? Goodbye, sir. Thank you. Here, Mr. Julian.
Thank you. What? £330,000. Yes, I've got it, but... Oh, all right. Fine.
What's all this about, Harrison?
May I know, too?
Sir Norman, I've no idea what that last bit was about, but I must explain that call from Pickford. You see, when the first scheme fell through, we decided on another, very cleverly concocted by Harrison. The plan was to frighten Meadows off by loading this company with an enormous contract with Pickford. The deposit was to cost all our securities plus most of our free cash. It was all laid on with Pickford that if the plan worked and Meadows pulled out, then the contract was to be cancelled and the deposit refunded.
I see. Very neat. And Meadows duly discovered it was all prearranged. And there's something about all this that I can't understand. Your first plan had been betrayed, yet you straightaway proceeded with another which equally courted the same fate. Why?
Well, the fact of the matter
Mr.
is...
Julian, it was my plan. Do you mind if I explain?
Not at all. Thank you.
You said, Sir Norman, that this plan of mine courted equal betrayal. That wasn't quite so. The chance of betrayal was only 6 in 7.
I thought you were a bookkeeper, Harrison, not a bookmaker. How do you arrive at these odds?
There are 7 of us in this room. And as Mr. Julian pointed out a moment ago, every one of us had a possible motive in betraying the company's affairs. You were in London, so there were 6 little nigger boys left. The traitor could have been one of us 6, or it could have been you. There you have the odds. What would you have done, Sir Norman?
I think I should have taken the same chance that you did.
Thank you. At the same time, I took another chance with somewhat better odds. It was that of discovering who the traitor was.
And have you, Mr. Harrison?
We may know that in a moment. Gentlemen, I must ask your indulgence for a certain liberty I took. After Mr. Julian had made all the arrangements with Pickford in connection with the scheme, I called on Pickford myself.
You did? What did you say to him?
I told him that there was the possibility of the scheme being betrayed to Meadows. It wasn't a pleasant thing to say, but it had to be said. And that if it were betrayed, Meadows would of course get onto him at once and warn him off. I suggested that if this did happen, he should bluff it out. Tell Meadows he was talking slanderous nonsense, that sort of thing. Meadows would get very excited, call him all the names under the sun, and insist that he knew damn well this transaction of ours was phony.
And so it was.
Did Pickford agree to do all this?
He came with me all the way. He was absolutely wonderful. We agreed that he should then say, "All right, Mr. Meadows, if you know so much, tell me the exact sum paid by Armstrongs to my firm as deposit." And it all worked out. Meadows said he knew that all right, and he quoted Pickford the figure.
What the hell good does that do?
You will recall that after we adjourned yesterday, I sent each of you a memo, Sir Norman accepted, of course, giving you certain information, including the amount of that deposit. Now, I knew that if our plan were divulged, so would this information be. So I took it upon myself to supply each of you with a different set of figures.
I
This is bloody impertinence. You betrayed your duties and deceived your whole board of directors. I'll not stand for it.
I must say that I feel just as strongly as Mr. Turnbull does on this matter. You've overstepped the mark, Harrison, in a way which no one with any shred of dignity could tolerate. What do you say, Armstrong?
Well, you both say that Harrison is wrong in deceiving his board of directors. I think you're overlooking the fact that short of Meadows dropping dead, there soon won't be any board of directors.
Come along, gentlemen. I'm getting very impatient. Don't any of you want to know who our little traitor is?
As a director, I refuse on principle to submit to such behaviour on the part of the secretary. Will you please take some action, Mr. Armstrong, or I shall walk out of this boardroom.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pleydon, but I would say that Harrison has shown a splendid initiative. And what is more, if there was any point to it, I would move that he be invited to join this board as financial director.
Hear, hear.
Well, I'm all for that, but I don't understand where all this initiative of Geoffrey's gets us now.
Remember my phone conversation with Pickford a moment ago, and what it was I asked him to repeat to Mr. Julian, £330,000?
Yes.
Well, that was the figure Meadows had quoted to him as proof that he knew all about our plan, the amount of the deposit. But remember that I'd given each director different information as to how much that deposit was. Only one man here could have divulged to Meadows that particular figure of £330,000, had he? Because only one man had it to divulge. Mr. Julian, I wonder if you would kindly take this envelope. It contains a list of the directors' names, and against each the separate information I gave them in my memos. Will you please look at the list and tell the board against which director's name is the figure of £330,000?
The name, gentlemen, is Charles Pleydon.
Pleydon? Good.
Dirty swine, Pleydon. I'll smash those blasted teeth down your throat.
Mr. Turnbull, apart from Grimm's fairy tales, what did you read when you were a boy?
Look what this dirty blighter has done to us. He's ruined us, and he's not going to get away with it. If he's going to enjoy his ill-gotten gains, he's going to do so in hospital. Get out of my way.
Campbell, we'll have no violence.
Miss Anderson, you're gradually developing the habit of disturbing us at the right moment. Who is it now?
Mr. Meadows and Mr. Griffiths. They're in reception.
Well, gentlemen, this is it.
That's all right, Julian. I asked them to call. I sent them a telegram at the same time that I sent yours. I have another proposition to make to them.
Just a moment, Miss Anderson. I'll call you back. Well, Pleydon?
Do you mind if I go now?
One moment, Mr. Pleydon. I intend having our two friends from Amalgamated brought in here in a moment. They may need your open support this time. You wouldn't prefer to stay?
With your permission, I would prefer to leave.
Mr. Pleydon, just a small matter of procedure first. Our future existence may be a little short, but we like to have things right. Do you intend resigning, or do we have to kick you off the board?
You can rely on receiving my resignation.
Thank you.
Good day to you, gentlemen.
Good day, Mr. Pleydon.
Julian, do you mind if I take over now?
Not at all, Sir Norman.
Very good. Let's have Meadows in.
Miss Anderson, bring Meadows and Griffiths here to the boardroom.
Certainly, Mr. Julian.
Well, what does he say?
He wants me to take you to the boardroom.
Well, let's get along there. We haven't got all day. Come on, Griffiths.
This way, Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Meadows? Mr. Meadows?
Oh, it's you.
Miss Anderson, I would like a word in private with these two gentlemen. I won't keep them long.
Certainly, Mr. Pleydon. I'll wait up the corridor.
You fool, we're not supposed to know each other.
I'm sorry, but they've just found out that I was the source of your information. I thought you'd better know.
Then you're a bigger idiot than I took you for.
Mr. Meadows, may I see you before I return to London to discuss that position you promised me?
Mr. Pleydon, a man who betrays once for money will betray again for the same reason. I have no position to offer you.
But you promised it to me. I have your letter.
Mr. Pleydon, Yorkshire is the one place left in England where an Englishman's word is still his bond. But it's his written contract you mustn't trust. Not if there's a loophole in it. Have another look at your letter. I dictated it myself.
Good day, Mr. Pleydon.
Good day.
Come along, miss. Where's this boardroom?
Just here.
Right. Now, Griffiths, watch these other worms squirm.
Or turn.
Aye. Or turn. That's right.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Would you please be seated?
Good afternoon to you all.
I'm Sir Norman Tullis. Mr. Armstrong, I believe you've met, and these are my other colleagues, Mr. Dodds, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Turnbull, and Mr. Travis. I would have liked you to meet Mr. Pleydon as well, but unfortunately he's just been recalled to London.
I'm Meadows. May we cut the cackle and get down to business?
That is why I asked you to call.
Well, I've nothing to add to my previous offer. The only thing I'm prepared to discuss is the manner of your departure, which I should prefer as soon as possible.
We can arrange the details through our respective solicitors, if you'd find that less embarrassing.
Mr. Harrison, you are an employee of the company. I expect you to remain at your post. It will help matters considerably.
I was about to hand in my resignation, and if this board accepts it, there'll be nothing to keep me here. I'd prefer to make things as difficult as possible for you.
I'll be in touch with you later.
Mr. Meadows, I'm afraid I didn't ask you here to discuss these particular matters.
Then why are you wasting our time? Sir Norman, do I have the recommendation of your board, or are you going to make fools of yourselves?
Neither, I'm afraid.
Come along, Griffiths, we're wasting our time.
Sit down, you damned ill-mannered ass.
Now, look
and
here.
Listen to me. What's the latest quotation from Amalgamated Shares?
We're not here to discuss the shares of Amalgamated Worsteds.
Will you please answer my question?
18 and 9.
Thank you. And not worth much more if my investigations are correct. Still, the goodwill must have some value. Mr. Meadows, on behalf of Henry Armstrong and Sons Limited, I am offering your shareholders 22 shillings and 3 pence per share.
You must be crazy.
That offer would cost you £4 million.
Would you like a banker's reference?
You are crazy.
No, I'm just a businessman like yourself, Mr. Meadows. With a few more scruples, I hope.
You're bluffing, and you're a fool if you think you can get away with it.
If you would care to check up in the usual reference books, you will find that I'm also on the board of Harlow and Mannheim Limited, merchant bankers. I have here a certified minute of that board, placing $4.5 million at the disposal of Henry Armstrong and Sons for the purpose I've stated. See for yourself.
Oh, look here, you can't do things like...
Shut up.
Oh, by the way, you've got some good men on your board, and when you convey this offer to them, you can tell them we're quite prepared to absorb them in the new organization.
With 2 exceptions, of course.
Well, Mr. Meadows, our offer to your shareholders will be in the final edition of today's London and Northern papers, unless I telephone them to withdraw it. Whether I do or not is up to you. All I require is that we hear no more of your offer.
What about the Henry Armstrong shares we've already acquired? You'll take those off our hands, I assume?
No.
But if we have to offload them onto the market, we'll lose thousands.
Then I can only suggest that you open an account in your ledgers headed Experience and debit it.
Unfortunately, it's not allowable for tax purposes.
All right. You win.
Good. And you accept the terms I've given?
I accept.
Well, gentlemen, it was very good of you both to have called. Good afternoon.
Griffiths, come on.
Norman, you were magnificent.
Yes.
Did you see the look on Meadows' face when he told him to sit down, Gavin?
I'm a prouder man than I've ever been, Sir Norman, because only now do I realise what it is like to be associated with men of your calibre. I mean that sincerely.
Thank you, Dodds.
I don't know how to express my gratitude, Sir Norman.
No, let's dispense with any further thanks, if you don't mind. But there is one thing I must ask you to do in return. I haven't altered my views about our first duty being to our shareholders. They will have suffered financially by the failure of Meadows' bid. I'm going to ask you to increase our dividends, more in line with our earnings. What do you say?
Agreed.
Under the circumstances, I can hardly refuse.
Good. If ever we need them, I'm quite sure that my friends in the city will stand by us just as they were prepared to do today. Now, there is one thing about which I'm rather troubled. Mr. Harrison, did you mean what you said to Meadows about resigning your position with us? It was the first I'd heard of it, of course.
And the invitation to join the board is a real one now, Harrison.
I don't know what to say. The offer is most generous, and it's the fulfillment of a very old ambition. But I'm afraid...
Wait a minute, Geoffrey. Perhaps I can throw a little light on this, Julian.
Please do.
Well, the fact of the matter is that Mr. Harrison is not entirely satisfied with his present secretary, and he's too soft-hearted to do anything about it.
Jonathan, what are you talking about?
Be quiet, Geoffrey. Well, now, in his position as financial director, he'll need the services of someone a little more experienced. I'm going to suggest he takes over Miss Anderson.
He does what?
She's not very happy with you, Julian. You're rather a hard taskmaster.
A taskmaster be damned.
Now, look here, John. Let's call the whole thing settled, shall we? It only remains for me, on behalf of us all here, to extend to you a very sincere welcome. I'm sure you will add enormously to the strength of the team.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
And now, gentlemen, is there any other business?
In any other business, the cast was as follows. Joyce Anderson, Judy Parfitt, Geoffrey Harrison, Brian Kent, Jonathan Travers, William Avenall, Julian Armstrong, David Crosse, Malcolm Turnbull, Ronald Magill, Sir Norman Tullis, Ross Hutchinson, Harry Dodds, Derek Royle, Charles Pleydon, John Ruddling, Martin Meadows, Tony Steedman, Stanley Griffiths, David Macmillan. The recorded production was by Peter Powell and Hugh Stewart in the BBC's Midland studios and was originally broadcast in December 1960.